Exactly 1 year ago to the day, 2 days on from Queen's Park Rangers announcing the sacking of Gareth Ainsworth after just 8 months in charge, Martí Cifuentes was appointed as the club's new head coach. With QPR 23rd in the Championship after 14 matches played and already 6 points adrift from safety, it was widely considered a risky move. The former Hammarby manager had never managed in England before, and here he was tasked with steering the R's to an unlikely survival. By now, of course, we know that this is a challenge that QPR's second manager of last season would overcome despite the odds, steering the club to 18th place and 6 points clear of the drop. Had the season started when Cifuentes joined in round 17, the R's would have finished 9th. But 1 year on, despite immense progress under Marti, QPR already find themselves back exactly where he first found them. 23rd place in the Championship, 3 points adrift from safety after 12 matches played, and looking increasingly likely to be embroiled in yet another relegation scrap for the third season in a row. So, with it being the 1 year anniversary of the Marti party, now feels like the perfect time to reflect on his first 12 months in charge. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It was clear soon after QPR announced Cifuentes' appointment that something had changed at Loftus Road. The last 6 permanent QPR managers in a row had been English, and Neil Warnock was only a phone call away if they wanted him back for a third stint at the helm. Instead, in a time of great turmoil, the club opted to give the job to a European coach that nobody had heard of. We know now, of course, that there was good reason for this shift in decision making. For one, Cifuentes had previously been sounded out for the QPR job in the 12 months prior, but his buyout at Hammarby had been deemed too high at the time by the board. This time though, things were different. Cifuentes was closer to the end of his contract in Sweden, and Christian Nori, then in an advisory role but soon to become QPR's new CEO 2 months later, led a charge for the Spanish coach to become the club's 7th manager in 7 years. Few knew who Cifuentes was, even fewer knew how to pronounce his name, but what was clear was that the club had decided to roll the dice. This shift became clearer in his opening interview. He spoke of a 4-3-3 footballing philosophy inspired by Johan Cruyff, a want to be dominant in possession, proactive, to win the ball high up the pitch, and to create as many chances as possible. Safe to say, it suggested a drastic departure to the way his predecessor saw the footballing world. Cifuentes arrived to a club in a bit of a state though, and that wasn't just on the pitch. 4 months earlier, Les Ferdinand had resigned from the role of director of football after 8 years, and a month after that, co-owner Tony Fernandes would sell his shares and disappear into the shadows after 12 years of ownership. The club was suddenly sticking sponsors on everything from stadium name to stands to coffee beans, suggesting its long-running financial issues were worse than feared, and pressure was rapidly piling upon Chief Executive Lee Hoos after a disastrous league start. It was unsurprising then, given these conditions on and off the pitch, that Cifuentes didn't start with an immediate bang, taking 4 matches to register his first win. But the difference in approach for his first match in charge away at Rotherham, a 1-1 draw, was stark. 5 days on from his announcement as head coach, he scrapped Ainsworth's wingback system and opted for his trusty 4-3-3, making 5 changes to the side that lost at home to Leicester City. It was hardly a glitzy first performance, but at the first time of asking, Cifuentes picked up Rangers' first point in 7 games and stopped the losing run. That wasn't enough for Cifuentes though, telling the media afterwards that we need to start getting results very soon because the other teams will not wait for us. Just 2 months earlier, Gareth Ainsworth had attempted to defuse a 4-0 opening day loss at Watford by saying we might have just played the league winners with 45 matches of the season remaining. A 0-0 home draw with Bristol City and a 1-0 loss at Norwich followed, but his tactical principles were clear. The long balls had been binned in favour of short passes, more possession, high pressing and patient build-up play. And on the 28th of November 2023, those tactics finally came good with Marti's first QPR win, a 4-2 victory over Stoke City. It was Rangers' first home win of the season, their first at Loftus Road since March 2023, and only their second home win since October 2022. Now, Stoke being down to 10 men had certainly helped, and the gambled substitution of left-back Ziad Lakesh as a winger late in the game to create the winner could easily have been dispelled as luck rather than strategy, but it was a win that perfectly embodied what Cifuentes had been getting at, dominating the efforts, corners, passing, tackles, and most importantly, taking our chances. And as our new manager had predicted, improved performances ensured that this wasn't just a flash in the pan, backing it up with consecutive 2-0 wins away at Preston and at home to Hull City. During this period, Cifuentes would tweak his 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1, a shape that would be pivotal to Rangers' survival and one that they are still using today. Things didn't stay rosy forever though. 2 weeks on from putting 4 past 10-man Stoke, QPR found themselves in an identical situation 25 minutes into their home clash with Plymouth Argyle, but couldn't break them down to find a win. Having collected 12 points and lost just 1 of his first 7 in charge, QPR would go on to lose 5 and draw 1 of their next 6 matches. It meant that Rangers missed opportunity after opportunity to climb out from the bottom 3, and the real possibility of relegation became heavier despite Cifuentes' bright start. What had gone wrong? Well, simply put, the defending that had got QPR into this mess in the first place had reared its ugly head again. While Marti had gone back to basics and tightened up his side from open play, the R's had started to consistently concede from set pieces, with defending corners the weakest part of their game, meaning no matter how much we tried to control a match, the opposition getting a free kick or a corner was like being awarded a penalty. On top of this, Cifuentes started to chop and change his starting lineups week to week in this team in search of a solution, but the squad at his disposal was greatly lacking in depth and quality, and it created inconsistency. Steve Cook was unavailable for 4 of this run of 6, centre-back Jimmy Dunn was looking a shell of himself compared to previous seasons, and neither Osman Kakai nor Reggie Cannon were proving to be viable options at right-back. But through a combination of pragmatism and invention from Cifuentes, as well as some out-of-the-box thinking from new CEO Christian Nori to enable the incoming of 4 new players in January for the cost of 1 lone Dazelle, QPR were able to turn the corner once again. The head coach abandoned his Cruyff ideologies and started to play football that was simpler and more direct, ending the first month of 2024 with a 2-0 win at home to Millwall and a point away at Huddersfield. February began with an unlikely 2-1 win away at Blackburn, QPR's first taste of victory at Ewood Park since 1999, which included first tastes of life in a hooped shirt for Hayden, Hodge and Frey, and was closely followed by a 2-2 home draw with Norwich. One of Cifuentes' most impactful decisions to date followed 2 matches later, when Jimmy Dunn returned to the starting lineup for the first time in 5 games in a 1-0 win away at Bristol City, this time as a right-back. It had come as a result of a pitiful team performance at Stoke City earlier that week, with Marti removing Cannon in favour of Jimmy Dunn. And whether it was a stroke of genius or out of pure frustration, it worked twofold. One, because it turned out that Dunn had Brazilian blood flowing through his Irish veins when going forwards, but 2, because his aerial presence in both boxes coincided with a considerable reduction in QPR conceding from set pieces. It wasn't the first time Marti had had one of these ideas either, because the month prior he'd been experimenting with the use of Lyndon Dykes in midfield to some success. For the second time under Cifuentes, QPR would go on to win 3 in a row, with consecutive 2-1 wins at home to Rotherham and away to champions Leicester. Jimmy Dunn would remain QPR's right back for the rest of the season, with his crowning moment a 92nd minute thunder bastard to see off Birmingham in March 2024, a result that would prove decisive with the Blues being relegated to League One 2 months later. And during this period, QPR would lose just 3 of their remaining 14 matches with Dunn in his new position. Now, you can't attribute our safety solely to Martí Cifuentes. That clever January business introduced the Premier League experience of Isaac Hayden to the team, providing an extra layer of security to our backline and an ability to play through the centre of the pitch. And Lucas Anderson had enhanced our ability to attack, knitting together Chair and Willock on either wing. There was also a remarkable lack of injuries in the second half of last season, which meant that Steve Cook and Jake Clark-Salter could consistently start together at centre-back, the latter riddled with injuries the season before and since. Ultimately, there were some decisions that weren't the manager's and there was some luck involved. But while the club's survival can't be 100% attributed to Cifuentes, there is no doubting that QPR would have been relegated without him. When he arrived, this team was dead and buried, couldn't score, and couldn't stop conceding. But come the end of the season, it was a team that was dispatching Leeds 4-0 at home, winning 3 matches on the trot for the 3rd time in his short tenure, and for the first time in 2 seasons, looking upwards rather than downwards. Although there were other contributing factors, that ultimately came as a result of a manager ripping this team apart, building it up from the back, going back to basics, compromising on his own philosophies when required, and sprinkling in the occasional batshit idea like Lyndon Dykes in midfield or Jimmy Dunn at right back. So how strange then that 12 matches into Marti's 2nd season at the club, QPR are exactly where he first found them, languishing in 23rd place with just a single league win away at Luton back in August. It's just so QPR, isn't it? Spirits were high at the end of last season, Loftus Road was packed, a final 4-0 home win had given a glimpse of what the future could hold under our Spanish saviour, and early into the season we tied him down on a new long-term contract. So what's gone wrong? Has Cifuentes been sussed out? Are the rumours that the gaffer and Nori don't see eye to eye true? Was it more luck than design last season? The general consensus right now that is our transfer business hasn't been quite good enough, but there's no denying that Cifuentes' change in the style of play to what we saw in the second half of last season, one that sees us repeatedly try to build up from the back, has not got the best out from this current squad either. And repeated tweaks to the starting lineup match to match remind me of that tough December period last season in which Marti chopped and changed, breeding inconsistency and ultimately mistakes. I do think on the whole though, most QPR fans know that Cifuentes is not the ultimate be-all and end-all source of these problems. Hopefully QPR's last two results, 1-1 at home to Coventry and 0-0 at Burnley, will mimic what followed after Marti's first two results this time last year, also 1-1 and 0-0. QPR of course lost 1-0 to Norwich in that next game, but then came a flurry of wins. In those first two matches last season, Cifuentes stripped the team back to basics, stopped that 6-game losing run, and kicked things off with his foundational 4-3-3. And over the last two games this season, we've stopped that 4-game losing run with a defensive approach after the last two matches, gone back to basics, and we're probably approaching something that looks closer to a 4-3-3. These next 3 matches before the international break are much tougher on paper than anything Cifuentes faced at the start of last season, but they will be equally telling as to whether or not Cifuentes can get us out of another hole. I sincerely hope he does and that he remains QPR's manager by the end of this season, and that in a year's time I'm making a 2 years of Martí Cifuentes video. Anyway, how would you rate Cifuentes' first year with the club? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed this video, you're not already a subscriber, please do consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me to grow the channel. Thank you so much for watching and maybe see you next time. Cheers!